parts of England. Maybe some difficult driving conditions here through the morning rush hour. Plenty of showers then through Monday afternoon, and temperatures still a little disappointing for the time of year. 18 or 19 in the south and 10 to 12 in the north.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
We're making this summer funner with 3 incredible prizes to be won. First, a fantastic £15,000 in tax-free cash that you can spend on anything you like. Next, there's the latest iPhone 15 with a brand new set of Apple AirPods. And finally, £500 to spend at the UK attraction of your choice. The summer fun could be on us. For another chance to win the iPhone, treats and £15,000 cash, text prize to 63232. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB06 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 28th of June. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect, and then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Stephen Dixon, and thanks for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threat and so on.
As time passes,
she could have said Stump. You made my argument for me.
My guest and I tackle the issues that really matter with a sharp take on every story.
Went everywhere.
Something practical could be done.
Or I can become something different.
Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Pearce. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes. Thank you for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello and welcome to GB News Sunday. Hope you're having a wonderful day out there. Thank you for joining us this lunchtime. I'm Dawn Neeson, and for the next 2 hours, lucky you, I'll be keeping you company on telly, online and on digital radio. Coming up this hour, sadly, a body has been found in the search for TV Dr. Michael Mosley, who went missing on a Greek island this week. We'll bring you the very latest on this developing story, but thoughts obviously with his family. Then Rishi Sunak avoided media interviews as he returned to the campaign trail on Saturday amid the fallout from his early return from the D-Day commemoration ceremony in Normandy. But was this the best move for his party? And the University of Cambridge has had to step in to tell students to stop flirting with their tutors under a new policy banning relationships with professors. Hey, but this show is nothing without you and your views. It's not about me, it's not about my brilliant panel, it's all about what you think about stuff. So let us know what you think on all the stories we're talking about today by visiting, I've learned this, gbnews.com/yoursay. See, good, isn't it? And join the conversation or message me on our socials. Very simple, @GB News. But first, it's those all-important news headlines with Theo.
Good afternoon, it's 1 minute past 1. I'm Theo Chkomba in the GB newsroom. A body has been found in the search for TV doctor Michael Mosley, who went missing on a Greek island earlier this week. An umbrella was discovered next to the body beneath a fence that runs around a bar on Agia Marina Beach. The area is surrounded by hilly, rocky terrain, around 30 minutes walk from the village of Petty, where Dr. Mosley was last seen. The search effort has spent days operating in dangerous conditions and high temperatures and has included police and firefighters equipped with drones. The Conservatives are to set out a plan to save around £12 billion a year by tightening the criteria for those who claim benefits. It would see more people told to find work, including some who receive disability payments. The Prime Minister has also pledged to tackle what he's called sick note culture. It would mean GPs are no longer able to sign people off work, with specialist workplace health professionals given the responsibility instead. Labour called it a vague promise that won't get Britain healthy or bring benefits under control. But Work and Pension Secretary Mel Stride disagrees.
We will be having mental health teams for every single primary, secondary school in the country and FE college, and we'll have mental health hubs, 150 of those across the country for those aged between 11 and 25. And alongside that, Camilla, of course, what we're doing is reforming the gateway into benefits, which we know from what the OBR tells us, for example, with the work capability assessments, changes that we're making, that will mean 440,000 fewer people on those long-term benefits going forward.
Meanwhile, Labour is pledging to alleviate some of the pressure on overcrowded prisons with a plan to add 14,000 new places. It would see some prisons classified as sites of national importance so ministers can take control of planning decisions. It comes after some inmates were released early due to severe overcrowding across the prison system. The government previously promised to deliver 20,000 new prison places by mid-2020s. Just 6,000 have been created so far. Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer says the problem in prisons is getting worse.
Well, I am critical of the Tories' early release scheme because what's happened is that they're releasing early prisoners who should still be in prison. And that's a shocking state of affairs, and like the many problems that they have left for the country, if we do come into power, we're going to have to fix it. Now, that will involve building prisons, that will involve taking tough decisions, because the money's been allocated for prison building, but there are tough decisions about planning and getting those prisons up. But what we can't have is a continuation of this total mess.
Time spent waiting for an ambulance would be cut under a plan set out by the Liberal Democrats. It would see an extra 1,000 staffed hospital beds, which the party says would help end excessive handover delays and patients having to wait in corridors for treatment. The party says the proposals would be funded through an upfront capital investment of £280 million to expand urgent treatment centres. Liberal Democrats leader Sir Ed Davey says that urgent action is needed to fix Britain's healthcare.
We've seen in some parts of the country people's loved ones dying before the ambulances arrive. We've seen queues at hospitals as ambulances are waiting to hand over their patients, and something has to be done. We've got a comprehensive package to turn around this mess the Conservatives made of ambulance services, and that starts with extra beds, extra 1,000 beds in our hospitals, but it also links up to our care policies so people can come out of hospitals more quickly when they're ready to.
For the latest stories, sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts. Now it's back to GB News Sunday.
Thank you very much, Theo. Right, let's get straight into today's stories, shall we? Now, starting with, obviously, breaking news and sad breaking news. As you've just heard in our bulletins with Theo, a body has been found in the search for TV doctor Michael Mosley, who went missing on a Greek island earlier this week. The Deputy Mayor has confirmed the body was found in a cave off of a rocky area beside Agia Marina. Joining me now is former Scotland Yard detective Peter Blexley to explain more about what has happened this morning. Peter, thank you very much for joining me. Normally we have a fun chat on here, but obviously talking about incredibly sad news today. What do you make of the latest developments?
Clearly a very sombre finding, and whilst Dr. Mosley has not officially been declared as deceased, my thoughts obviously are with his wife, his children, and everybody who loved him, which included a lot of people. There's been huge outpourings of affection for him today, with many obituaries and very warm words on numerous media outlets. With regards to the procedures that will now take place, I understand that the coroner has examined the body in situ, in other words, where it was found, and that the body is now in the process of being removed to a suitable location, whereby there will, of course, be a post-mortem, and it will be the post-mortem that should establish the cause of death.
I mean, just quickly, I don't want to dwell too much because it is incredibly sad news, and obviously thoughts with our Michael's wife Claire and his 4 children. Obviously, a search team never wants to find this situation, do they? I mean, you must have been involved in situations like this as well. What's it actually like when the thing you really hope not to come across has happened?
Hope springs eternal. It's what motivates people, whether it's police officers searching for a missing person or whether it's rescuers who go to a natural disaster. And in fact, of course, a lot of police and former colleagues were sent to Thailand when the tsunami struck because they were experts in identifying victims. So it's always about hope, but when the hope fades and the unfortunate reality kicks in, then it's really a matter of providing a service for loved ones. So, of course, treating any bodies that are found with the utmost respect and dignity, and doing all that you can to soften what will be, inevitably, for someone, utterly heartbreaking news.
Peter, thank you so much. Appreciate your time. That's Peter Blexley, former Met detective there, on the very sad news that a body has indeed been found on the island of Simi. Thank you very much, Peter. Now, should we go back to politics? Rishi Sunak avoided media interviews. Funny that, isn't it? Has he returned to the campaign trail on Saturday amid the fallout from his early return from the D-Day commemoration ceremony in Normandy? The Prime Minister was due to meet reporters during a visit to County Durham and Yorkshire on Saturday, but the interviews were strangely cancelled, with the Tories citing time constraints. Joining me now, we've got 2 perfect panellists for this today. Joining me now is a GBNews political correspondent, Olivia Utley is joining me first, before we get to our panellists, but Olivia at first to explain what's going on. Olivia, I thought the whole point of being on the campaign trail on your battle bus was to engage with the media and sell yourself. So why is Rishi suddenly taking cover?
Well, absolutely, you would have thought so. Rishi Sunak was visiting out and about in Bishop Auckland in County Durham yesterday. That's one of those red wall seats that the Conservatives won, to almost everyone's surprise, back in 2019. The whole visit seemed to be set up for the media, and indeed a huddle, as they call it, with journalists was planned in a walled garden during the afternoon. But that huddle was called off right at the last minute, with Conservative press officers saying there simply wasn't time. Well, you think they probably could have managed to make a little bit of time if Rishi Sunak had wanted to appear in front of cameras. He clearly didn't after the fallout from that D-Day misstep on Friday. 2 cabinet ministers have now come out and said that he made a mistake. Penny Mordaunt, who is obviously vying for the position of leader of the opposition should the Conservatives lose this election, said that what Rishi Sunak had done was completely wrong. And Mark Harper, the Transport Secretary, who's a close friend of Rishi Sunak's and endorsed his campaign for leader when he was running against Liz Truss, also said that the Prime Minister had made a mistake. There was even talk yesterday, whispers in Westminster that Rishi Sunak might be on the verge of resigning. The rumour was that he had simply had enough. He was miserable after his D-Day gaffe and wanted to step away before the next election. Well, this morning, Mel Stride, the Work and Pension Secretary, has dismissed that rumour as rubbish. He says that Rishi Sunak will be leading the party into the next election. But things really are not looking good for the Conservatives this morning. Labour is leading by an astonishing 25 points in the polls. That's the biggest lead since March. And it's difficult at the moment to see that closing anytime soon.
Olivia, just very quickly, we are running out of time here, but I mean, Nadine Dorries is I know it's been denied, I know Rishi's staying there, etc., etc., but Nadine Dorries, obviously not often the most reliable person, was implying overnight that maybe it was time for our David Cameron to step into the breach, who is very statesmanlike. He was there for the whole D-Day commemorations, wasn't he? And for Rishi to take that step back. What do you think the chances are of that one?
I think it's incredibly unlikely. I mean, it would be very, very unusual for a man who is not even a sitting member of the House of Commons to step in and become Prime Minister at the very last minute. That said, I mean, if Rishi Sunak were to stand aside, and again, I do think that is incredibly unlikely, someone like David Cameron might be the Conservatives' only choice. Most of the cabinet ministers look quite likely, if polling bears out to the general election, to actually lose their seat. Someone like Penny Mordaunt only has a majority of about 15,000, which these days isn't enough to be considered a safe seat. So if Rishi Sunak were to stand aside for any reason, then perhaps a non-MP would be the Conservatives' only option.
Indeed, the plot thickens. Olivia Utley, thank you very much for bringing us up to date on our Rishi Sunak on the campaign trail, but not actually campaigning and just avoiding journalists. Right, OK, now, as I said, we have a brilliant panel on this one today. I'm joined by political commentator Joe Phillips and former Conservative Special Advisor Charlie Rowley. Now, you've both, welcome both of you, lovely to see you, thank you for joining me on a Sunday afternoon. Now, you've both worked advising politicians, so you are perfect for this debate. I mean, I think we'd all agree, no matter what side of the political spectrum you're on, that this was a big mess-up on Rishi Sunak's part.
You have to ask whether there isn't some deal between Dominic Cummings and Alistair Campbell, who are running the campaign. Because what is so astonishing, Dawn, is that Rishi Sunak doesn't seem to have any political instinct, any human instinct. I mean, he's not the first person, the first politician. Do you remember Boris Johnson hiding in a fridge?
Yes.
You know, but he just makes it worse and worse and worse. And where's the common sense that says to you, I think I need to be here, or I just need... It's very short, I've got 10 minutes with the press, but don't avoid them completely.
So you would have advised him to, look, actually, you have apologised, but, you know, you were on the campaign trail,
well,
your battle bus.
First of all, I would have said, you stay in Normandy. Well, you know, it was a pre-recorded interview, for heaven's sake. And even if at the beginning of the plans they said, oh, you don't need to stay, it doesn't matter, it's a bit like, come for the drinks or come to the after party. When you realise that Biden and Scholz and Macron are going to be there, you just say, I'm staying.
I mean, Charlie...
It's just unbelievable.
I'm going to come to you, Charlie. It's just pure common sense. And I'm old enough and ugly enough. I remember the 70th anniversary of D-Day when David Cameron was there as Prime Minister, and he said it was one of the most emotional things he's ever done. He spent almost the whole day fighting off the tears. And he was there. Surely he must have said to Rishi Sunak at one point, really not a good idea for you to go, mate. I think you should stay here. Or is there a double bluff thing coming on here and David Cameron is maybe playing a trickier game than we think?
No, I don't think that's true. I don't think David Cameron has any ambition himself, really, to come back and lead the Tory party. He's been there, he's done it, he's been Prime Minister, he's left, he's come back as Foreign Secretary.
It's that power, isn't it?
Well, I mean, you'll have to ask him. But, look, I think Cameron, reports in the Sunday Times, said that he did say to Rishi, I think you should stay, but there's only so much he could do. But I think, look, it was a mistake. You know, you can't... no one's going to sort of weasel their way out of it or try and cover it up or justify or offer some sort of spin because the Prime Minister has accepted it was the wrong thing to do. It was the wrong thing to leave. I think we're slightly at risk at suggesting that he didn't turn up at all and it was a total snub.
No one's saying that. He
went to the Portsmouth events, he went to Normandy, he just left early, which is wrong, but just for the full context. And I think to offer just... Again, no justification because a mistake has been made and he's held his hands up, but as an explanation... When you are, I think, the Prime Minister and you're leading a campaign for your party for your country that you've called, where probably most people called it too early, where you're 20 points behind in the polls, it's very easy, I think, to allow that to eat into your mind every day of every second, whether you're at a wedding, a party, a ceremony, a very, very historic, a commemoration event. It's still going to be on your mind. And if you're leading that campaign and you want to win the next election, when you are so far behind in the polls, where things aren't going well, where you are wholly responsible for that, of course you're going to want to get back to the UK early. Now, no justification, but an explanation as to probably what was going through his mind, why he was so determined to come back when he did. Obviously, accepting that was wrong and making that apology, I think, was obviously right. And in terms of the media yesterday, I think having a ticking off by Penny Mordaunt, which, again, the right thing to do, she's gone out and gone further than most of the cabinet colleagues. But I think she's articulated it well. The whole country was annoyed. Veterans, certainly. So I think having that little bit of, it was totally wrong, it was completely wrong, I think she actually said. I think he's had a ticking off. Now let's just take the heat out of it. There was no need for him to do a media huddle yesterday, which is just a load of journalists sitting around all firing questions at him. Take the heat out of it. He's apologised. He's had a ticking off. Have a day to just go to the local fete, which he did in Richmond, and do some other campaign events. And let's just breathe on a Sunday, and we'll kick off again on Monday.
Yeah, but it didn't take the heat out of it, Charlie, because we're still talking about it.
But we'd be talking about it even more if he'd done a huddle with journalists, and that was a complete car crash. We would be.
Then he's not fit to be Prime Minister. I mean, there is a point, as you and I both know, having advised people, there has to be one person. And I get the impression that there are too many cooks, too many chefs stirring the broth or whatever the phrase is, that he's hearing one thing from somebody, something... Now, it could be his wife, it could be an old friend, it could be somebody. We know Boris Johnson had Eddie Lister. We know David Cameron was very, took his wife's advice very seriously. It could be anybody. It could be Larry the Downing Street cat. But there has to be one person who says to him, you're making a mistake, or you need to do this, who he listens to. And it seems to me that there is an element of course, he's fed up, it's ghastly, he's probably not going to be Prime Minister on July the 5th, and he probably desperately wants to go and do something else. He's only got a few weeks to go. Just do it with good grace and do what people expect you to do, which is to, just after you've said, let's bring back national service, to not then be there for D-Day, is just ridiculous. To talk about, Britain on the world stage, but to not be there with senior people, including President Zelensky, who, frankly, has got a bit more going on than Rishi Sunak.
Totally. No, and again, it's not a justification, it's an explanation, and he's apologised. But you're right, I think. The buck stops with Rishi. I mean, the buck stops with the boss. But there should be some advisors around, and there are plenty of political advisors for Rishi, more than what there were for Theresa or for David Cameron. So one of them you would have hoped would have been able to sort of say, boss, you need to stay.
Well, unfortunately, we've run out of time on that particular bit of this debate. It will go on, no doubt. But for all the best analysis and opinion on that story and much more, go to our website at gbnews.com. Now, do you want cheering up? Yeah, go on, you do. Of course you do. It's time for the Great British Giveaway and your chance to make this summer really special with over £16,000 worth of prizes to be won. That's actually £15,000 cash and a whole host of treats. But you have to be in it to win it. I'm going to stop saying that phrase. It's irritating me as much as you. And here's all the details you need.
It's our summer spectacular. 3 top prizes that have to be won. There's cash. £15,000 in tax-free cash to spend on anything you like this summer. Plus a brand new iPhone 15 with a set of Apple AirPods. And if that wasn't enough, we'll also treat you to some fun in the sun with £500 to spend at your favourite UK attraction this summer. For another chance to win the iPhone, treats and £15,000 cash, text WIN to 63232. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB06 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 28th of June. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Go on, get dialing, get entering at 16 grand. Come on, what can you do with that? I'm Dawn Neeson, this is GB News Sunday, and there's loads more coming up on today's really packed show. Now, Labour's manifesto will pledge laws to crack down on violence against shop staff. But how will it actually be imposed? All of that and much more to come. This is GB News, Britain's news channel. Don't go too far.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Almost half of those seeking to have an affair are happier with their job than with their primary relationship. But what exactly does a cheater do for a living?
Well, medical assistants and nurses, surprisingly, top the lists of professions for female cheaters, and it's jobs in IT or tech for male cheaters, which I think is less of a surprise.
No.
This is all according to a survey by the dating site Ashley Madison.
OK, so why do people cheat? To answer this, we're joined now by broadcaster and psychotherapist Lucy Beresford. Good morning, Lucy.
Morning,
Lucy. So, is it OK of me to say naughty nurses in this day and age? Am I going to get cancelled for that?
You're out.
Yeah, I'm out.
Been
Gone.
cancelled.
See ya.
There's the door.
But yes, you're talking about the caring professions, and I think it's very appropriate.
Surprised by that.
Women, well, because they're very nurturing, very loving, very giving, whereas the males who are in tech and IT, very strategic.
Is there a link between high-pressure jobs, maybe nurses infamously, you know, they're working long hours, underpaid, stressed out? Is there a link between jobs of that nature and cheating, maybe as a relief?
Absolutely. Is it just about sex, or is it about emotional connection? Is it about emotional validation? And increasingly, people are discovering that their primary relationship is just not a place where they feel safe.
This survey found that personality didn't actually come into it that much. It was about half and half if you're an introvert or an extrovert that you'd be likely to have an affair.
I think that's right. And I think that just speaks to the fact that all people want to have a good emotional connection. So it doesn't matter whether you're really social or whether you're someone who has to recharge your batteries in private time, that actually we only ever want three things in life. We want to feel safe, we want to feel loved, but we also want to feel heard. And in increasingly a number of marriages and long-term relationships, we get into grooves, we get into ruts, and we stop hearing our partner, we stop listening to them, and they stop listening to us.
The People's Channel.
This is GB News, and we are Britain's election channel.
This vote may seem to be about the politicians and the media, but it's actually about you. We won't forget that.
Join us up and down the country as we follow every moment together.
More than ever, it's important to hear all sides
as you make your decision in the run-up to polling day.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel. Britain's election channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
It's true. You're not wrong. No one will be cancelled.
Lovely. Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Isabel Webster. Thanks for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, and we are Britain's election channel.
This vote may seem to be about the politicians and the media, but actually, it's about you.
And we won't forget that.
Join us up and down the country as we follow every moment together.
More than ever, it's important to hear
all sides
as you make your decision ahead of polling day.
We're here for you.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's election channel.
Welcome back to GB News Sunday with me, Dawn Neeson, on your telly, online and on digital radio. Now, Labour's manifesto, which is due on Thursday, I believe, will pledge laws to crack down on violence against shop staff. The Shadow Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper, says the party would take action to end the tide of aggression and vow to stop police ignoring thefts valued at under £200. Speaking to staff at a co-op store, Ms Cooper heard harrowing tales of staff threatened with hammers and knives and being sprayed with petrol. My wonderful panel are still here with me, and they're both political advisors, which is fantastic, because that's what we need today. So Charlie Rowley and Joe Phillips. Now, I mean, The Sunday papers are full of it today, right, aren't they? We've had pledges, we've had promises, we've had ambitions, and the manifesto is about out this week. Tories, I believe, on Tuesday, the Labour one on Thursday, so they're all, you know, unveiled. So Yvette Cooper announcing that shop staff would need to be protected from violence by a special law. Well, Charlie, who knew it was wrong to go and beat up someone who works in the shop? I mean, surely we have those rules in any case. You can't just go and beat people up. Anywhere.
You're totally right, and there's a bit of a problem here, a problem anyway that's going on so much in society. But I think Labour have pledged to sort of crack down on antisocial behaviour. That's fine. That's one thing. Should be welcomed. We can all get on board with that. But creating a new law to protect shopkeepers, well, that will be a policing thing, not an antisocial thing. It's a criminal thing. So you need more police and you need more, maybe PCSOs, but that's a different thing entirely to just cracking down on antisocial behaviour. Antisocial behaviour is about the littering, about the broken communities, about people that are neighbours from hell, and all the rest of it. So, and the people that are disobedient in the classrooms and broken families, that's a serious thing, but it's separate to criminality, which is taking place up and down our high streets where people are literally walking into any old shop, casing the aisles, throwing into their baskets, booze and God knows what everyone, and walking out without anybody batting an eyelid because they know that they can, and there's no protection for the shopkeeper or the shop staff. We're seeing this story time and time again, and it does need cracking down on, but it's very different to what Labour are sort of pledging and versus this law.
It's like, look, fair play to Yvette. I mean, I've got mates who work in shops, and it's horrible at the moment, and they're terrified to tackle anything that happens, and, they are advised not to, and that's why people can walk in and walk out with £200 worth of goods, and they feel free to be able to do so. But, I mean, what she said today, it's like it's been said a lot over the past, and it doesn't actually mean anything, does it?
I think, just to put it into context, Dawn, USDAW, which is the shop workers' union, who have long been campaigning for attacks and threats on shop workers to be regarded in the same vein as attacks and assaults on emergency service workers. The government finally did introduce it into the criminal bill a few months ago.
Criminal Justice Bill, yes.
So it hasn't. I'm not sure whether it's actually gone through or where it is, whether it's sitting in the ether waiting for the next government. But this whole problem has been going on pre-COVID with the police not bothering to turn up to anything under £200. So the more we talk about it, the more people know about it, the more they get away with it, and the more brazen they are. So I think, what Yvette Cooper is... My understanding is what she's saying is, yes, we need more community and visible policing, but we also need the police to do their job. And actually, if you are being robbed, it is the job of the police to come and deal with it. And that is the same in rural communities where, the police, yes, of course, they're overstretched and there's not enough of them and all the rest of it, and we know why. But, if crimes don't get reported because people don't think they're going to be investigated, then they don't appear on any statistics. So then you get into this vicious circle of saying, crime's going down. Well, actually, they're not. People have just given up. And that's really dangerous.
Yeah.
Really dangerous.
Charlie?
No, the only thing I was going to add, which I absolutely agree with Yvette on this, which is quite surprising. Possibly. I know, steady. I've had a couple of sugars in my tea. But the one thing that she said, which is absolutely right, and which I think we just have to sort of make clear, she is saying also in the interview that she gave, this isn't about people who feel necessarily hard-pressed. There is a cost of living crisis.
Yes, of course.
But these aren't people that are just slipping in,
babies' nappies or...
into the... These are hardline people, criminal gangs that go into the shops that fill their baskets full of alcohol and God knows whatever. They are totally taking the mick out of all of us and those shopkeepers. They are breaking the law. They need to be. They need to feel the full force of the law. So I'm glad that she's drawn that distinction because it is clear that people aren't just. You can't just use the excuse, we've got a cost of living crisis and it's a terrible government. These are people that are targeting shops and doing it deliberately.
And I think the other thing is that this low-level crime, which is often seen as, is only part of the much bigger thing. It's a little bit like stolen vehicles, driving without insurance, driving off without paying for petrol. You can bet that there will be a link somewhere to something more serious, because the people who behave like that don't give a damn about anybody or anything or the laws of the land.
Yeah.
So actually, if you think you can walk in and I'm going to, as you so eloquently keep saying, Charlie, casing it, I think you might have done this before.
Yeah, I was going to say, actually, something you want to tell us both, Charlie?
Yes, I've got a bottle round the back.
Brought it in with him.
Could have done, yeah. It's that gin, I think. That's what they were using earlier.
Well, yeah, absolutely, yeah. None of which, we've just got tea here, by the way. If you missed the previous show with the lovely Ben Leo, they had gin and wine. We have tea. Just saying. OK, we have run out of time with that debate as well. I'm Dawn Neeson still. It's GB News Sunday and there's plenty more coming up on today's show. But first, here is those news headlines with the lovely Theo.
It's 31 minutes past 1. I'm Theo Chicumba in the GB newsroom. A body has been found in the search for TV doctor Michael Mosley, who went missing on a Greek island earlier this week. An umbrella was discovered next to the body beneath a fence that runs around a bar on Agia Marina Beach. The area is surrounded by hilly, rocky terrain around 30 minutes walk from the village of Petty, where Dr. Mosley was last seen. The search effort has spent days operating in dangerous conditions and high temperatures and has included police and firefighters equipped with drones. The Conservatives are setting out a plan to save around £12 billion a year by tightening the criteria for those who claim benefits. It would see more people told to find work, including some who receive disability payments. The Prime Minister has also pledged to tackle what he's called sick note culture. It would mean GPs are no longer able to sign people off work, with specialist workplace health professionals given the responsibility instead. Labour called it a vague promise that won't get Britain healthy or bring benefits under control. Meanwhile, Labour is pledging to alleviate some of the pressure on overcrowded prisons with the plan to add 14,000 new places. It would see some prisons classified as sites of national importance so ministers can take control of planning decisions. It comes after some inmates were released early due to severe overcrowding across the prisons system. Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer says the problem is getting worse.
Well, I am critical of the Tories' early release scheme because what's happened is that they're releasing early prisoners who should still be in prison. And that's a shocking state of affairs. And like the many problems that they have left for the country, if we do come into power, we're going to have to fix it. Now, that will involve building prisons. That will involve taking tough decisions because the money's been allocated for prison building. But there are tough decisions about planning and getting those prisons up. But what we can't have is a continuation of this total mess.
For the latest stories, sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you, Theo. And just some breaking news now. It has been confirmed Michael Mosley's family have identified the body and confirmed that it is Michael. So thoughts with the whole family. Wife and 4 children are out there at the moment. So an incredibly sad story. Now, there'll be more on that breaking story as we go through the afternoon. Now, remember, let me know all your thoughts on the stories by visiting gbnews.com/. But now we're going to take a quick break and we'll be back very soon.
Good morning, welcome to your latest GB News weather from the Met Office. So a bit of a cloudy start for many of us this morning, but there is some sunshine in places due to high pressure situated down towards the south of the UK. But it's these weather fronts that will push in from the northwest, turning quite rainy and cloudy for many of us overnight tonight. That area of rain is reaching parts of Northern Ireland through the rest of this afternoon, so turning quite cloudy here with some outbreaks of rain. The best of the sunshine likely to be across the southwest of England, with some dry weather here. Further north, some sunshine, but plenty of showers pushing in from the north through the rest of this afternoon and feeling quite chilly here in that northerly breeze. Temperatures only 13 or 14 degrees. A little warmer further south, but still a little below average for the time of year. As we head through the rest of Sunday evening, that area of rain does continue for Northern Ireland, and the showers continue for parts of Scotland as well, likely to be heavy in places with some hail and thunder mixed in. There'll be some brightness between those showers through the rest of the evening, but for Northern Ireland, a very damp end to the day on Sunday. Outbreaks of heavy rain persisting through the first part of the night. Outbreaks of rain as well for parts of Wales and into central and southern parts of England, and generally quite a cloudy end to the day here for many places. That area of rain across Northern Ireland, as I mentioned, pushes its way southeastwards through Sunday evening and into the start of Monday, but it will be turning drier across Northern Ireland and parts of Scotland through the early hours of Monday morning. And under those clear skies, likely to turn quite chilly as well. We could see a touch of grass frost in places. Generally staying a little bit milder though across much of England and Wales under that cloud and rain. Temperatures here around 12 or 13 degrees to start on Monday. So for Northern Ireland and parts of Scotland, a dry, bright but quite chilly start to the day. Plenty of showers continuing to push in from the north, but quite a cloudy and damp day, particularly for eastern parts of England. Maybe some difficult driving conditions here through the morning rush hour. Plenty of showers then through Monday afternoon, and temperatures still a little disappointing for the time of year. 18 or 19 in the south and 10 to 12 in the north.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. GB News, Britain's election channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
It's true. You're not wrong. No one will be cancelled.
Lovely. Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking, this is a nightmare for the Conservatives again. Down to earth. It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it? And most importantly, honest. Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them. Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to GB News Sunday with me, Dawn Neeson, on your telly, online and on digital radio. Now, New Zealand, probably one of the wokest countries on earth, if you remember back to the pandemic, is expected to revoke a ban on drilling for oil and gas amid fears of blackouts. The country's coalition government is preparing to invite energy companies to resume exploration in the 3 major offshore fields that supply most of its gas. Seeing as Labour over here plans to impose a similar crackdown on the North Sea oil and gas, is this a warning sign that the country cannot afford to stop oil and gas exploration? Joe, come on. I mean, New Zealand are pretty woke and they're going back on their green pledge.
They've got a new government since Jacinda Ardern resigned, and they've got a sort of a fairly right-leaning coalition. I don't think wokeness, whatever that means, depending...
I knew you'd say that.
Well, because people use it, it means... And they say, woke, it's something I don't agree with. I think you're being silly. Actually, you know, if this is what New Zealand really wants to do in a beautiful part of the world, I think it's a real shame. I mean, we've had long debates, and obviously there are people who don't think climate change exists, who presumably think the world is flat, and actually you could probably just walk to New Zealand without having to go round anything. But I think, you know, the serious issue is something that all political parties and all countries need to grapple with. And it's not something that is easy for the Labour Party either, if we bring it back to this country. But I think what they've made clear is that they recognise there's a transition period. And whilst this, or the outgoing Conservative government, have issued new licences, Labour have said they won't issue any more new ones. They'll honour those agreements, but looking to renewable energy, wind power, solar, whatever. And it seems to me that, you know, we can't ignore, even if some people think it's woke, but there's an awful lot of scientific evidence saying, you know, we really are at a tipping point and the time is running out. And I think, you know, anybody under 30 is not going to thank us for sitting here going, oh, it's so woke to do something. Just turn the central heating up. Let's drive a bit further. We've really got to take this seriously. You know, we've got floods. We've got... climate change is affecting every part of the world. We've got floods, we've got fires, we've got, you know, terrific heat waves. That means crop failure, it means famine, it means parts of the world will become less and less habitable, which then, you know, subject close to the GB News viewer's heart, creates migration because people are moving to go somewhere cooler, safer, where there's more food, where they can grow crops. So we need to take it seriously, and it's no good just doing what we've done for the last 30, 40 years, going, let the next lot deal with it. There won't be.
OK, this comes on the very day over here in today's Sunday Telegraph, I believe, that Claire Cortino, the Energy Secretary, is warning that Labour's net zero plans, which are due to come in 5 years before the Conservative plans, risk leading to blackouts and public unrest. What do you make of these two stories happening on the same day, basically, Charlie?
Well, very interesting. And look, you know, you saw the backlash, rightly so in my view, when it came to policies like ULEZ under the Labour Mayor of London, where you're basically impacting on hard-working people that need a vehicle to get to work. It was basically a road tax, a car.
That was a health policy. That wasn't about roads. It was
about
air.
If the mayor is so focused on health, he should take a trip on the London Underground, where the air quality is worse than it is on the roads. That's the first point. But the second point is broadly that you can't bring people with you, and if you're going to ultimately hit them in the pockets and tax them, and if it's unaffordable for hard-working people. So I'm all for net zero up until 2050. I think we have a responsibility for our own citizens and for our country to get cleaner air, as you were saying, Joe, just a second ago. But also, you've got to make sure that it's affordable for people. You can't just impose things. So, you know, a steady step towards greater insulated homes, that is a priority, to prevent people putting on the heating where they don't necessarily need to. That does come at a cost, but you can stretch that cost over a number of years for hard-working people. But ultimately, we're never going to solve the great climate crises that, again, Joe was talking about, such as the floods that you're seeing in Brazil for the first time in many years, such as the melting of the ice caps in Antarctica, unless you get the big hitters like China, like India, like America also, to play their part in reducing their emissions. Otherwise, the world, you're never going to solve the global climate crisis just by the UK doing its bit. Of course, we need to do our bit for our own citizens, but I'm afraid unless you get those big emitters on side, you know, which is why I think those crackpots like Just Stop Oil that wanted to disrupt that royal wedding the other day and whatever else they think is fair game, they need to probably, well, dare I say it, hop on a plane and go to China and protest out there and see how they like it out there.
Well, and I think you're absolutely right. You know, China is building thousands of coal-fired power stations, but we're importing stuff from China all the time, aren't we? You know,
The argument against that would say we have to because we don't, you know, if we go completely green, we don't have enough energy supplies of ourselves.
No, but you know what, Dawn? 14 years of the Tories, and they have failed on so many levels. And they failed, actually, we were talking about David Cameron earlier, but in the coalition with the Liberal Democrats in 2010, you know, they shelved nuclear power, building more nuclear...
Well, it was Nick Clegg that blocked it.
It was Nick Clegg that blocked it, who said it's going to take 20 years to come to fruition. Well, you know, that was, in my opinion, far worse than going back on his promise about student tuition fees, because the long-term effect was for people who weren't even born, never mind going off to university. So we've had this head-in-the-sand attitude. We haven't done anything about the big oil companies who are making massive profits, and massive profits out of all of us. You know, and that's lots and lots of things there. If you had better public transport, then, you know, you wouldn't need so many cars. Every time you build another 2,000 houses somewhere, that's at least 2,000 cars. What are we doing about planning regulations? What are we doing about infrastructure that says every new build has got to be solar-powered, heat pump, double water systems to take off the strain on our sewage and overflows and things? And what are we doing to improve things? We're just going, no, don't worry, we'll worry about it another day. And that is not grown up. We need grown-ups.
Grown-ups?
Well, there's a commitment to net zero by 2050. You know, the increase in electronic vehicles, I think, is something. But you've got to have the infrastructure to have those vehicles, and actually those vehicles need to become more cheaper to buy. So it should be cheaper to buy an electric vehicle than a petrol vehicle. I don't think that's the case at the moment, because you don't have that infrastructure. So it is getting your ducks in a row to make sure that you can then have that sustainable community.
Pressure on business. It could certainly be putting pressure on the oil and gas companies and on the car manufacturers.
Well, I'm going to have to put pressure on you two at the moment. Thank you for that bit of hot air. Well, I wasn't going to put it quite like
All
that.
hot air.
But, yes, I'm too woke to tell you to shut up.
Of course you are.
Right, thank you very much on that one. Right, I'm Dawn Neeson. This is GB News Sunday, and there's loads more coming up on today's really packed show. This story is fun. The University of Cambridge has had to step in to tell students to stop flirting with staff under a new policy banning relationships with professors. All of that and much more to come. This is GB News, Britain's news channel. Don't go too far.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
How prevalent is it in those with darker skin, like me?
That's a great question, and it's one that we get a lot. So your skin tone does affect your risk of skin cancer. People at the most risk are people with lighter skin tones, so light-coloured hair and eyes as well, lots of moles and freckles, a history of sunburn or a family history of skin cancer. But people with darker skin tones can still burn and can still get skin cancer. Anybody can get skin cancer. So I would encourage everybody, regardless of your ethnicity or your skin tone, to think really seriously about taking care when it's sunny. That myth that you've mentioned that black people can't get skin cancer is really prevalent, and that's something I want to dispel right now immediately, because more black people think maybe they can't get skin cancer. That might mean that when they spot something unusual for them, they're less likely to go to the doctor and they're diagnosed later. And when you're diagnosed later, your outcomes do tend to be worse.
So the figures are disturbing that more people are getting skin cancer. But what about outcomes? I mean, if you do get skin cancer, what are your prospects?
So yeah, like you say, this research is a mixed picture. We're seeing incidence, so the number of new cases going up, which is not good news. But there is some good news in that mortality, so whether you're going to die or not, is actually going down. And we think that's partly due to early diagnosis, which I just mentioned is so important. But also research has led to better and kinder treatments, which mean the outcomes are likely to be better. So now, if you're diagnosed at the earliest stage, stage 1, with melanoma, actually around 9 in 10 people will survive their disease for 5 years or more.
The People's Channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking, this is the nightmare for the Conservatives again. Down to earth. It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it? And most importantly, honest. Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get the book thrown at them. They catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Sunday nights on GB News. From 6, Neil Oliver. At 7, it's Free Speech Nation with Andrew Doyle. At 9, Mark Dolan. And at 11, get set for the week ahead with headliners. Tomorrow's papers tonight. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family. Simply go to gbnews.com/yoursay.
Hello, welcome back to GB News Sunday with me, Dawn Neeson, on your telly, online and on that there digital radio. Now, lots of you have been sending your thoughts in, and I'm going to read some out, some of the polite ones. I mean, maybe, Joe, maybe not so polite about you at the moment,
That's
but
fine.
you know.
Do you know what? I don't care.
No, I know.
The thing is, Dawn, I don't know whether any of those messages that you get actually come from real people.
No, absolutely.
And I think in the old days, if they were real people, a lot of them would have been on lined paper in green ink, capital letters, very hard.
Yeah.
But they could be bots.
And
from Russia,
actually,
for all I know.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, basically, a lot of people are saying, a lot of people sympathy over Michael Mosley's story and the family. And I think that probably the most important messages at the moment. So we'll just leave that there and we will come back to that. But please send in your messages, whatever you want to talk about, www.gbnews.com, your say, and let me know your thoughts on everything we're talking about today. Or on our socials, either at GB News, which is easy to do. Now we're going to have some fun. We're going to talk about flirting. Well, we're not actually, because you're not allowed to do it. The University of Cambridge has told students to stop flirting with staff under a new policy banning sexual relationships with professors. The new rules, which come into force next month, beginning of July, include a warning against behaviour that could be interpreted as flirtatious. University staff have been told they must report any behaviour that could constitute a student making advances towards a personal, particularly intimate relationship with them. Now, I mean, Joe and Charlie are both still here, obviously. Look, these are all consenting adults. I get, the student teacher thing is a no-no. It's not a good thing. But the flirting line on this one, I'm a bit confused with this one, Charlie. I mean, how do you know? If you're a tutor, how do you interpret what is flirting and what is just sort of like having a bit of banter?
Yes, and the fact you've got to sort
Very nice trousers, by the way.
Thank you.
You see, you didn't even recognise.
Oh, I didn't.
He's got
I think I'm blushing now. I'm blushing.
So, what's flirting? What's me complimenting your very well-fitting trousers? Yes.
Well, very well-fitting. Code for too tight. And I've put on a bit of weight on my holiday.
Snug.
Thank you. Snug.
Yes, as if you blushed, Joe, looking at that by the sound of it.
Dear me.
But I think, but you're right. I think there is a line, because obviously when you're 18 and you go to university, it might be the first time you're away from home. It might be the first time that you're open to maybe a bit of a nightlife, social activity, drinking and all the rest of it, and partying. So there is still obviously a bit of responsibility. Well, there's a lot of responsibility to be had between people that have been there and those that are newly turning up, and the responsibility between pupils and professors. But you're right. I don't know how it can be policed if you're sort of, And by the way, on the flip side, I know a couple who, this pupil ended up dating their professor, and they've been together for about sort of 15 years now. It's not as clear as obviously what you'd have in school. Obviously not. But I think the idea is, how do you report what is flirting? Because obviously I used to go after lectures with my professor and the whole seminar. We used to go to the pub afterwards, and I became very good friends with. She was a mature student. She was on the very, very far left of political. You wondered where that was going for a second, didn't you?
We both reading a huge sigh of relief.
She was on the far left of the bed, and I was.
It's lunchtime, for some people.
Of the political spectrum, but I was on the centre right. But we got on so well because we had these different ideas. But you do it over a drink with your professor and the rest of the team, and it brings people together.
I'm just going to look very, very quick for you, Joe. We're running out of very nice trousers as well. We're running out of time.
Not as snug as Charlie. I think you've got to have some rules in place that there's no abuse of power. Policing it's difficult. We ought to be in a position where you can say, get off, back off, or, banter's fine. Actually, I hate that word. I hate it almost as much as woke. Go on, email in.
Thank you very much. I'm flirting with both my panels because I can. No one's right. In any case, how hot is the weather out there? Let's have a look with the lovely Ellie, shall we?
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good afternoon. Welcome to your latest GB News weather from the Met Office. So it's been a cloudy day for some of us, but there has been some sunshine around, all thanks to high pressure situated close by towards the southwest of the UK. But it's these weather fronts out towards the north and northwest that will bring some outbreaks of rain as we head through the rest of today and into the start of the new working week. So a damp end to the day for Northern Ireland, and then into parts of Wales and northern and central parts of England as well as we head overnight tonight. Turning a little drier across Northern Ireland and parts of Scotland into the early hours of Monday morning. Still 1 or 2 showers across the very far northeast, but it's those cloudy conditions across England and Wales that will give some milder temperatures overnight, maybe 11 or 12 degrees here. Under the clearer spells across parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland, perhaps quite a chilly start in places, maybe some grass frost as well. But further south, that cloudy and damp start to the new working week. This could give some tricky driving conditions and perhaps some disruption through the morning rush hour on Monday. But further west across parts of Wales, Northern Ireland and northwestern parts of England, it'll be a bit of a drier and brighter start to the day. A chilly start in places across parts of Scotland, but quite quickly replaced by those heavy and blustery showers pushing in through the north through the early hours of the morning. Through the rest of Monday, those showers will continue across parts of Scotland, slowly pushing their way southwards as that area of rain across eastern parts of England pushes away towards the southeast. The best of the sunshine again likely to be across western parts of England, West Wales, but plenty of heavy and blustery showers around. Temperatures on Monday still disappointing for the time of year, around 18 or 19 degrees in the south, and again only 10 or 12 degrees further north. As we go through the rest of Monday evening, those showers do continue for a time, but they will gradually start to ease overnight, so leaving a bit of a drier start for many of us on Tuesday. Plenty of showers still around on Tuesday though, but perhaps something a little drier on the way through Wednesday. However, further rain is likely through the latter half of the week.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Thank you very much, Ellie, and there's loads more coming up on today's show. But just first, I want to just read this really quick message out from Lynn Dixon. Hello, Lynn. Thank you very much for getting in touch. We do believe you're real. Lynn says, what's the point in putting our views, our points of view across if the panel don't think we're real? We do think you're real. Jo was just a bit discombobulated by the comments about our about her on the last one, but we all do think you're real, and we really, really love you. And please do keep those messages coming in on there, especially to Jo. Right, any case, right, OK, now we're going to have to go to a break because I've waffled on for too long. Honestly, I'm getting told off all the time here. But don't go too far. Here is the break.
It's our summer spectacular. 3 top prizes that have to be won. There's cash. £15,000 in tax-free cash to spend on anything you like this summer. Plus a brand new iPhone 15 with a set of Apple AirPods. And if that wasn't enough, we'll also treat you to some fun in the sun with £500 to spend at your favourite UK attraction this summer. For another chance to win the iPhone, treats and £15,000 cash, text prize to 63232. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message, or post your name and number to GB06 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 28th of June. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
This is GB News and we are Britain's election channel.
This vote may seem to be about the politicians in the media, but actually it's about you.
And we won't forget that.
Join us up and down the country as we follow every moment together.
More than ever, it's important to hear
all sides
as you make your decision ahead of polling day.
We're here for you.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's election channel.
GB News is Britain's election channel.
And when the big stories break, we're tackling them on Britain's newsroom. When we disagree, and we disagree a lot, it's even livelier than normal.
We don't disagree that much.
We do. His comedy, though, is revolting. I knew her, and unlike you. That explains Beverly Turner's temperament.
It's a bit frosty in here, isn't it?
You'll have one of me one day.
For dartball practice. Britain's newsroom on GB News. Weekdays, 9:30 a.m.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threat and so on.
As time passes,
She could have saved Storm.
you made my argument for me.
My guests and I tackle the issues that really matter with a sharp take on every story.
Went everywhere. Something practical could be done.
Or I can become something different. Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello and welcome to GB News Sunday. Thank you for joining us this lunchtime. I hope you're having a wonderful weekend. I'm Dawn Neeson, and for the next hour, I'll be keeping you company on telly, online and on digital radio with a really packed show. Now, Michael Mosley's wife pays tribute to a wonderful, funny, kind and brilliant husband as she confirms the body found in the search is him. We'll bring you the very latest on this sad developing story. Then Sir Keir Starmer will launch the Labour manifesto this week with a cast iron pledge not to put up income tax, national insurance or VAT. But what about all the other taxes? And a 23-year-old plus-size model has been crowned Miss Alabama. There's a picture of her. But we will be debating, is idolising obese models empowering or simply dangerous? But this show is nothing without you and your views. And Anastasia, good afternoon. Thank you for getting in touch. See, you are real. We do love you. Get in touch. The thoughts on all the stories we're discussing today by visiting gbnews.com/your say, as Anastasia has just done, and join the conversation. Or message me on our socials. We're at GB News. But first, let's get those news headlines with Theo.
Good afternoon. It's 1 minute past 2. I'm Theo Chicomba in the GB newsroom. The family of Michael Mosley has confirmed that a body found on the Greek island of Symi is that of the missing TV doctor. Dr. Claire Bailey Mosley says she's devastated after her husband's body was discovered beneath a fence that runs around a bar on Agia Marina Beach. She described her husband
enjoy doing these sort of things. I find them very revealing. I mean, I have made a lot of...
She described her husband as wonderful, funny, kind and brilliant, and said the family takes comfort in the fact that he nearly made it to safety after an incredible climb. Dr. Mosley, who was 67, was found in hilly, rocky terrain around 30 minutes walk from the village where he was last seen. Meanwhile, Labour is pledging to alleviate some of the pressure on overcrowded prisons with a plan to add 14,000 new places. It would see some prisons classified as sites of national importance so ministers can take control of planning decisions. It comes after some inmates were released early due to severe overcrowding across the prison system. The government previously promised to deliver 20,000 new prison places by the mid-2020s. Just 6,000 have been created so far. Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer says the problem in prisons is getting worse.
Well, I am critical of the Tories' early release scheme because what's happened is that they're releasing early prisoners who should still be in prison. And that's a shocking state of affairs. And like the many problems that they have left for the country, if we do come into power, we're going to have to fix it. Now, that will involve building prisons. That will involve taking tough decisions because the money's been allocated for prison building, but there are tough decisions about planning and getting those prisons up. But what we can't have is a continuation of this total mess.
A crackdown on people claiming benefits could save around £12 billion a year, according to a plan set out by the Conservative Party. It would see more people told to find work, including some who receive disability payments. The Prime Minister has also pledged to tackle what he's called sick note culture. It would mean GPs are no longer able to sign people off work, with specialist workplace health professionals given the responsibility instead. Labour called it a vague promise that won't get Britain healthy or bring benefits under control. But Work and Pension Secretary Mel Stride says the reform is needed.
We will be having mental health teams for every single primary, secondary school in the country and FE college, and we'll have mental health hubs, 150 of those across the country for those aged between 11 and 25. And alongside that, Camilla, of course, what we're doing is reforming the gateway into benefits, which we know from what the OBR tells us, for example, with the work capability assessments changes that we're making, that will mean 440,000 fewer people on those long-term benefits going forward.
Time spent waiting for an ambulance would be cut under a plan set up by the Liberal Democrats. It would see an extra 1,000 staffed hospital beds, which the party says would help end excessive handover delays and patients having to wait in corridors for treatment. The party says the proposals would be funded through an upfront capital investment of £280 million to expand urgent treatment centres. Liberal Democrats leader Sir Ed Davey says the urgent action is needed to fix Britain's healthcare.
Seen in some parts of the country people's loved ones dying before the ambulances arrive. We've seen queues at hospitals as ambulances are waiting to hand over their patients, and something has to be done. We've got a comprehensive package to turn around this mess the Conservatives made of ambulance services, and that starts with extra beds, extra 1,000 beds in our hospitals, but it also links up to our care policies so people can come out of hospitals more quickly when they're ready to.
And the world's grumpiest duck is celebrating his 90th birthday today.
And happy 2, happy 3.
The cartoon duck, known for his raspy and sometimes short temper, made his debut on this day way back in 1934 in a short cartoon titled The Wise Little Hen. Tony Anselmo, who's voiced the classic Disney character since 1985, thinks Donald has become even more relevant over the years, possibly thanks to the frustrations of modern life. For the latest stories, sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts. Now it's back to GB News Sunday.
Thank you very much, Theo. I love that Donald Duck story. We need cheering up, don't we? Right, let's get straight into today's story, shall we? As you have just heard in the news bulletins, Dr. Claire Bailey Mosley has confirmed her husband, TV doctor and columnist Michael Mosley, has been found dead on the Greek island of Symi, adding that the news was devastating. His body was found in a cave off a rocky area beside Agia Marina. Dr. Mosley went missing on a Greek island earlier this week. It's just incredibly sad news. You can see the pictures there. They were the last known sightings of Dr. Michael, a very well-known author and columnist for the Daily Mail newspaper. Had left his wife on the beach, walking home, and then just disappeared. It's an incredibly sad ending that I don't think any of us hoped would happen, really. It's obviously there's not much we can say about this Charlie. It's just, you know, the thoughts with the wife and children and everyone that loved him.
Absolutely, and as Dr. Claire Mosley said, it's absolutely devastating, as you'd expect it would be, to hear the news after a 3 or 4 day search of your husband and father going missing. But the pouring out of tributes from people right across the media and the medical profession when he first went missing to send their hopes and prayers and love to the family. Obviously, it's going to be incredibly difficult knowing this news today, but the idea that he's been found, I think, will be the smallest of reliefs, but obviously tragic and devastating news that he's now been found.
Actually, that's quite an important point, isn't it, Jo, that there is some closure because, you know, imagine...
yes, you know, I mean, you know, who are we to even intrude on somebody's appalling grief? But yes, it is probably better to know than not know. I just think there are not very many people who are natural enthusiasts, brilliant communicators, who can make something like medicine and health as accessible and fun as he did. And actually, your producer, Lewis, was talking earlier before we came in about a kids' programme that he used to do called Blood and Guts, which was about the history of surgical operations and things like that. But I think, you know, that attitude of making it accessible, not bossy, but changing things, and, you know, little things can make a difference, will have had a huge difference on many, many people's lives. And I think, you know, that legacy is something that may have actually saved somebody else's life or made them make a change in their life.
Yeah.
And I think that is something that, you know, we should all be grateful for.
Just want to read one particular message that's coming in here. Andrea, good afternoon, Andrea. Thank you for your message. Andrea says, I'm absolutely shocked and devastated by the news. I've watched Dr. Mosley and his wife Claire on so many TV shows over the years, and I benefit from following their dietary and nutritional advice. My sincerest condolences to Michael's family and friends. And Andrea, you've just echoed what so many people are saying. Incredibly sad news this Sunday lunchtime. Now, we go back to politics, and Sir Keir Starmer is launching the Labour manifesto this week with a cast-iron pledge not to put up income tax, national insurance or VAT. The plan, which will be revealed by the party's leader and his shadow cabinet on Thursday, will include a triple lock that Labour government will not raise the big three taxes for 5 years. Joining me now is GB News political correspondent Olivia Utley. Olivia, this is making the papers today, big announcement, but there's a lot not being said in this announcement, isn't there? I mean, what do you make of it?
Well, Starmer was sort of painted into a corner by Rishi Sunak. He really had to make this announcement because over the last couple of weeks, the Conservatives have launched an ad campaign suggesting that a Labour government would cost the average family £2,000 a year in tax rises. Now, that was one of the only Conservative messages which did actually seem to be cutting through, to use the Westminster parlance. And so Keir Starmer really did have to come out and say, no, he will not raise any of the three major taxes, income tax, national insurance or VAT. It's very similar to what Tony Blair did in 1997 when he said he wouldn't be raising any of the main three taxes, and also he would be sticking to the Conservatives' plan for day-to-day spending. Now, this really will have taken the wind out of the Conservatives' sails, but of course it does leave Keir Starmer, and more specifically his Shadow Chancellor Rachel Reeves, in a very sticky position. Labour have promised quite a few very expensive policies, and so far it isn't quite clear how they're going to be funded. We've heard a lot about clamping down on tax evasion. We've heard a lot about closing that loophole that allows non-DOMs to pay much less tax than residents of the United Kingdom, and we have heard a lot about the plan to cut VAT for private schools. But according to the Conservatives' calculations anyway, even if those three policies raised as much as Labour is expecting it to, and that's a really big if, it still wouldn't cover the amount that they've promised in spending. So there seems to be a black hole in Labour's finances. Now, one way to fix that black hole would have been to raise one of the three major taxes, but Starmer has promised not to do that. So I think everyone will be watching very, very closely on Tuesday when that manifesto is launched to see where that extra money is going to be coming from. Shadow Chancellor Rachel Reeves is said to be a maths whiz kid. Well, she's going to have to be, because a few rabbits are going to have to be pulled out of a few hats.
I think they might need more hats and more rabbits. Olivia Utley, thank you very much for that update on the Keir Starmer's announcement to not put up the big three taxes. Now, let's see what my panel make of this. I have Joe Phillips and Charlie Rowley still with me, both of whom have been political advisors. Coming to you first on this one, Charlie. I mean, all right, the big three taxes, but there's an awful lot of taxes still that aren't being mentioned in this, aren't they?
Absolutely, and Olivia was just saying there, when the manifesto is launched on Thursday, I think Labour's announcement's coming out. It's Tuesday for the Tories, but when Thursday's Labour manifesto comes out, there'll be lots of questions to answer as to where they're going to fund all of the things that said they're going to do. And whilst it's telling, and it sounds like a headline to say we're not going to put up your taxes, we all know taxes are at the highest burden that they've ever been. The Tories have put those up to deal with COVID, to deal with energy prices, make those interventions that they needed during the furlough scheme, etc. The Tories are going to be pledging to cut taxes. Labour will say that they're not putting them up, but they're not saying that they're going to cut national insurance. They're not saying that they're not going to cut income tax. They might freeze it, which means that they'll be freezing it at the highest level that they've been for some time when the Tories are going to pledge to cut it. So that's just one red herring there. And as Olivia was saying, you're right, there's going to be a black hole that needs to be filled. That's why the Tories have been pushing this £2,000 cost to families, which the Treasury have had a role in. I think the Tories have got some... I'm sad to say ministers haven't been able to articulate what's happened over the last week, which is a bit annoying if you're a Conservative, because the Treasury have been involved in drawing up 21 of 27 costings that the Tory party put out. The other 6 came from, I think, Labour publications, 1 independent business, and 1 was, I think, a question in the House of Commons that, the Tories sort of got the calculations for and added the 2 figures together, divided it by working households. So the idea that the Treasury haven't had any involvement in costing Labour's plans is for the birds. It's not right to say, which is why the Tories are still going to be pegging this £2,000 cost to hard-working people over the course of the campaign.
And they seem to have forgotten that, as you've just pointed out, that we're now paying the highest level of taxes since the Second World War. So that has actually happened under the Tory government. So we're at a higher level of taxes. That means that some people with pension and other benefit increases are now pulled into paying tax, whereas they weren't before.
The fiscal drag effect.
Yes, exactly, because the personal allowance hasn't gone up. And I think, the £2,000 is a red herring. The Tories want to make it stick. But what Labour need to do is to remind the public that since 2019, £130 billion have been wasted of your money, my money, Dawn's money, viewers' money on schemes that include the Rwanda scheme, that include HS2, that include over £500 million in a contract to Fujitsu for helping Northern Ireland GB trade post-Brexit. The list goes on and on and on. And I think what we need to do is to actually have a grown-up conversation about where money is spent, because if it's about bribing us with a few quid here and there in tax cuts, we already know everybody who fills their car up with petrol, pays for a train ticket, buys clothes, buys food, does shopping, they know that everything is really expensive. And when the winter comes, it'll get expensive again. So we need to have a conversation about who do you trust to spend the money properly? Is it going to be somebody who's actually going to fix public services, or is it going to be somebody who's going to line the pockets of their COVID mates, making money out of a pandemic, or giving it to crazy schemes like Rwanda?
The Resolution Foundation have calculated that, no matter what Labour and Conservatives, both, this isn't even political, are promising, taxes will have to be raised. Something has to pay to fulfil all the promises we're being made. So
by all parties.
By all parties, no, absolutely.
We've just had Mel Stride, talking about they're going to do all these mental health hubs. Well, they've had 14 years to do that. Who's going to pay for those?
The 14 years thing. I mean, that's all you've got to do at the moment if you're against the government. It's like, well, you've had 14 years, sort it out.
Exactly.
But, money has to come from somewhere. So all the stories we're reading today about these pledges and we won't cut this tax, we won't cut that, the money has to come from somewhere.
Well, it does. And I think... I'm trying to be as analytical as well as political as I possibly can, but I think, there was disruption, obviously, during Brexit. It took, not just in terms of finances, but in terms of political bandwidth within the civil service to actually try and get a deal done. But that was what the democratic result brought out. That had to happen. You then had COVID, where, yes, I agree with Joe, up until a point where, a lot of money was wasted. It went into contracts that it shouldn't have done. I blame no civil servant or anybody that was involved in administering those contracts at a time when the government was facing an absolute national emergency. Anybody that came forward that was awarded a contract, knowing in blind faith that they were never going to be able to deliver, but were able to swindle the government effectively, and those civil servants that were part of a procurement team that had to procure all kinds of things. Those people should be those people should be in jail, and they should not. But I would never blame civil servants. I would never blame the government at all, whatever the government was that administered those contracts. I know some people like to. I'm not saying that Joe's, but there was a lot of waste. But pursue the people that took us for a ride.
People on benefits. Stop, trying to call.
But again, but because of COVID, we've seen the burden on the NHS. So it does need more money. That's why we've seen more people that need talking therapies because of mental health, because of anxiety, or because of COVID. So there has to have been an increase in the spending in those areas. We need to now get that down. COVID is gone. We've moved on. So it's about now, instead of just spending, and the final thing I'd say, instead of raising taxes, you can increase your revenue by growing the economy.
Yes.
And the economy is now starting to grow. Inflation is down. So that's where the Tories will say, don't put that at risk by having a Labour Party that want to put up your taxes.
When you have a government like the one that we've got pursuing carers who earn a penny more than they're allowed to, and then trying to chase them for their, their carers' benefit, while they have done nothing to pursue the crooks who made a fortune out of COVID. You see, the trouble is, yes, we need to grow the economy, but you can't grow an economy when you've got everything that is broken. If you've got people who want to work but who can't get seen by a doctor or can't get a hospital appointment, they're not going to go back to work.
Funny enough, you mentioned growing the economy. We were running out of time on this debate, unfortunately, but Labour didn't mention corporation tax anywhere in their announcement today. But we'll see. Manifesto revealed this week. Now, throughout the election campaign, we will be hearing from people across the United Kingdom about what really matters to you. Today, for the first time, we meet Lynn from Yorkshire. Let's have a look what she has to say.
I'm Lynn Massey-Davis. I'm 63 years old. I'm originally from the West Midlands, but have lived in Yorkshire for over 30 years. I make glass objects, memorial jewellery like cremains and other things for people, and I make silver jewellery. Brexit's caused me enormous problems. The cost of materials has gone up. The ability to import things efficiently from other countries without paying import duties and tariffs, which I never had to pay before. The main issues that are important for me in this election is better management of the NHS. I'm really worried about getting ill. I have recent experiences from my cousin, Barbara, who died 2 years ago. She had a hernia that became strangulated, and she'd been waiting on a waiting list for 8 months. And then the hernia strangulated, and an ambulance was called, and she waited 7 hours for the ambulance and died just as the ambulance got there. In the past, I've actually voted for probably every party, but this time I'm going to vote Labour, and it's purely on, although I don't agree with all of Labour's policies, I'm concerned about their views on women and sex and gender. But I can't vote for Conservative, and I want to vote for the party that will oust the Conservatives. And in my book, that's Labour.
Interesting views, but that's what it's all about, getting your views across. Now, for all the best analysis and opinion on that story and more, go to our website, gbnews.com. Now, let's cheer up, shall we? Time for the Great British Giveaway and your chance to make this summer really special with over £16,000 worth of prizes to be won. That's £15,000 in cash, no tax, your cash, and a whole host of treats. You have to be in it to win it, though, as someone once said. And here's all the details you need how to do that.
It's our Summer Spectacular. 3 top prizes that have to be won. There's cash. £15,000 in tax-free cash to spend on anything you like this summer. Plus a brand new iPhone 15 with a set of Apple AirPods. And if that wasn't enough, we'll also treat you to some fun in the sun with £500 to spend at your favourite UK attraction this summer. For another chance to win the iPhone, treats and £15,000 cash, text WIN to 63232. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB06 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 28th of June. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Good luck with that one. I'm Dawn Neeson, and this is GB News Sunday. There's loads more coming up on today's packed show. Labour say they will establish 80 new rape courts across England and Wales to fast-track cases as part of a wide-ranging plan to tackle violence against women and girls. But how will they do it, and will it be enough? All of that and much more to come. This is GB News, Britain's news channel. Don't go too far.
Nana are Queer, weekends from 3 p.m.
Angela, what's on the menu?
Well, the menu today really is the battle between King Charles and Prince Andrew about his home, a royal lodge. It's gone on for quite a long time now because increasingly the place looks very dilapidated. No paint, raw under the way that the whole thing's built, and King Charles gives him £3 million a year to have safety, and also another $1 million just to keep it going, and it costs about £400,000 a month to keep the place going.
Really?
So it is ridiculous that he's there, and I think it's like anybody. If you get to a certain age, his daughters don't stay there because they stay in London, and you get to when you downgrade. And it's not a big deal, it's not hopeless, it's actually gives you a fresh feeling. And I think it's very silly that he won't do it, but he's determined not to, and the King is determined to, and it seems that if he doesn't listen and make all these decorations properly, that he's going to stop giving him the money, which would be very difficult indeed for him.
Because every 5 years, isn't he meant to paint the outside and all sorts of things?
And the Queen didn't give him much money in her will. It all goes to the heir. So Charles has got the money. And so, you just wonder how he'll manage, because he's only got, what he can do.
How he'll manage? He can move somewhere cheaper like the rest of us. I mean, £400,000 a month.
Yeah.
You could go to Frogmore Cottage, which is the offer.
Yes, exactly. That's the offer. And it's all been very decorated. Apparently Meghan did it very nicely. It's much smaller, but it's also very carefully guarded. So he should be able to do that.
The People's Channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Ellie Costello, and thank you so much for joining us here on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to GB News Sunday with me, Dawn Neeson, on your telly, online and digital radio. Hope you're having a wonderful Sunday afternoon out there. Now, another Labour policy announced today. They say they will establish 80 new rape courts across England and Wales to fast-track cases as part of a wide-ranging plan to tackle violence against women and girls. The specialist courts will be set up in unused rooms with spare capacity within every existing court. In an effort to end a growing backlog of cases that causes 60% of rape victims to drop out before their cases even begin. I have Charlie Rowley and Joe Phillips with me. Joe, the statistics on rapes are horrific. I mean, 60% of rape victims drop out and 26% result in no charge whatsoever. So, I mean, in theory, this is a good idea, but as I keep coming back to all these announcements we hear, how are you going to do it? How? What's the...
Just on those statistics, Dawn, that's 60% that the CPS have decided to prosecute. That's not including the ones where it doesn't even get that far. And the wait time, 2, sometimes 3 years.
Yeah, and the way women are treated.
So, and it's for both sides. It's, for women, obviously, but it's also for somebody who is accused, whose life is on hold while they're waiting for the court. No, I mean, I think... there are some things where you have to say, we need to do this and we need to do it for all the right reasons, and I can't imagine anybody would disagree with it. And so you find the money for that somehow. You can use buildings. You don't need to build special places. You can use rooms. You can fast-track and... I mean, after all, this government, or the outgoing government, were going to do fast track for asylum claims, if you remember. Well, frankly, this is a damn sight more important and will have an impact on people's lives and will also show two things. One is that women and girls that violence is taken seriously and will be punished. And the other one is to show perpetrators that they will be punished. So I think it's a very good thing, and I'm sure that the Labour Party, should they get elected, will find the wherewithal to do that. And you encourage solicitors, lawyers, barristers, and the other thing they're talking about is having specialist support workers, not necessarily police officers, but in police stations. And some areas are better than others. But as we know with policing, it is very, very fragmented where you are. And the first problem is, does anybody take it seriously?
Well, when I said it's expected to be announced, it has been leaked to the papers today, but it's expected to be announced. So, make of that what you will. Charlie, look, every woman and, anyone that loves women will think this is a brilliant thing, but I just want to know how it's going to actually happen. We need more specialists to deal with traumatised women. We need more police officers to investigate this. We need more of everything. We need more funding to put into this. So it's all very well making this announcement, but how are you going to do it?
Well, that's absolutely right. And the first thing to say is that Joe was spot on about those figures and the statistics, because it's the 60% of dropouts when a charge has been brought. This is even before it's even been reported, before you've turned up a police.
So many women don't bother.
And they don't, exactly. So I think in order to tackle it, and it goes to a wider problem about the criminal justice system, speed in this case is of the essence. So if you are a victim, you should be able to turn up to the police station to see someone that is specially trained in terms of the trauma that you have had, and to get it processed quickly and efficiently. Now, that is not just going to be beneficial for the victim, because you don't want to have to then 3 or 4 years later in a criminal court have to relive that experience. Yes. That's why people will drop out. But it is also for, as Joe was rightly saying, the accused. The trouble with rape cases is that it is very, very often between one word against another. Yeah. And it might be in a part of a relationship, it might be where alcohol or a night out was, and you don't know the relationship or the balance between. So they are complex cases, so the sooner that they are resolved, or the sooner that they are dealt with, the better. But I do think that there is room. And one of the things about COVID, I know we were just talking about, there were ways and innovative ways that you had to deal with things. In a post-COVID world, I would have thought that we would not be having packed commuter trains as we usually do today, because people can sort of have the ebbs and flow, and people don't have to pay the cost to sit, to stand up on a train. I would have thought post-COVID we can use council buildings that don't councillors sit until 7 p.m. Use those buildings to get through that backlog of the criminal justice system.
I think that's a really important point.
So I do think
an awful lot of things done very, very fast during COVID, and now suddenly we can't. It all grinds to a halt. Okay, great point. Right, we're running out of time, unfortunately. I'm Dawn Neeson. This is GB News Sunday, and there's loads more coming up on today's really packed show. But first, it's time for the news headlines with Theo.
It's 31 minutes past 2. I'm Theo Chikomba in the GB newsroom. The family of Michael Mosley has confirmed that a body found on the Greek island of Symi is that of the missing TV doctor. Dr. Claire Bailey Mosley says she's devastated after her husband's body was discovered beneath a fence that runs around a bar on Agia Marina Beach. She described her husband as wonderful, funny, kind and brilliant, and said that the family takes comfort in the fact that he nearly made it to safety after an incredible climb. Dr. Mosley, who was 67, was found in hilly, rocky terrain around 30 minutes walk from the village where he was last seen. The Conservatives are setting out a plan to save around £12 billion a year by tightening the criteria for those who claim benefits. It would see more people told to find work, including some who receive disability payments. The Prime Minister has also pledged to tackle what he's called sick note culture. It would mean GPs are no longer able to sign people off work, with specialist workplace health professionals given the responsibility instead. Labour called it a vague promise that won't get Britain healthy or bring benefits under control. Meanwhile, Labour is pledging to alleviate some of the pressure on overcrowded prisons with a plan to add 14,000 new places. It would see some prisons classified as sites of national importance so ministers can take control of planning decisions. It comes after some inmates were released early due to severe overcrowding across the prisons system. Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer says the problem is getting worse.
Well, I am critical of the Tories' early release scheme because what's happened is that they're releasing early prisoners who should still be in prison. And that's a shocking state of affairs. And like the many problems that they have left for the country, if we do come into power, we're going to have to fix it. Now, that will involve building prisons. That will involve taking tough decisions because the money's been allocated for prison building. But there are tough decisions about planning and getting those prisons up. But what we can't have is a continuation of this total mess.
For the latest stories, sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you very much, Theo. Now, there's loads more coming up on today's show, but before I tell you what we've got lined up for you, Nana Akwe's show is on at 3 o'clock, and she joins us now to reveal, looking gorgeous as always, what she's coming up on her show. Nana, what surprise have you got in store for us today?
Well, on Sunday we always have a surprise. I do actually have a mystery guest, and obviously during this election period we all need a bit of a laugh, don't we, frankly? So coming up at about 5 o'clock, my mystery guest, I'll give you a clue right now, she is one of the creators of Jongleurs. That is, of course, the comedy club circuit group. And, yeah, she'll be talking to us about her journey and what you need to do if you want to be a comedian, which I'm sure some of the politicians could probably tell you about because some of them, the way they're behaving. But, look, we're talking about Keir Starmer's plans with prisons. And we're going to be, because part of it is that they are going to rip out some of the planning laws, so you could potentially have a prison in your backyard. And if you're going to rip out planning laws, what other things can you do? Can you put in pylons? Can you put in wind farms in someone's backyard? So we're going to be looking at the efficacy of that kind of approach, plus all the usual stuff, the big topics of the day, and, yes, loads more.
Good point. And that's it. Yeah, I hadn't thought of that one. That sounds like a cracking show. Don't go anywhere. And Nana is coming up straight after this at 3 o'clock. Thank you very much, Nana. Now, remember, let me know all your thoughts on all of the stories we're discussing today by visiting gbnews.com/yoursay and join the conversation. Or message me on our socials. We're at GB News. Now, there is loads more coming up on today's show before we get to Nana. A senior Labour figure has said the party will bring back freedom of movement in the EU. Hold on a minute, what? Is this just a foot-in-the-door tactic to undo Brexit or a great move for the country? What do you reckon? All of that and much more to come. I'm Dawn Neeson and you're with GB News, Britain's news channel. Don't go too far.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather from the Met Office. So a bit of a cloudy start for many of us this morning, but there is some sunshine in places due to high pressure situated down towards the south of the UK. But it's these weather fronts that will push in from the northwest, turning quite rainy and cloudy for many of us overnight tonight. That area of rain is reaching parts of Northern Ireland through the rest of this afternoon, so turning quite cloudy here with some outbreaks of rain. The best of the sunshine likely to be across the southwest of England with some dry weather here. Further north, some sunshine, but plenty of showers pushing in from the north through the rest of this afternoon and feeling quite chilly here in that northerly breeze. Temperatures only 13 or 14 degrees. A little warmer further south, but still a little below average for the time of year. As we head through the rest of Sunday evening, that area of rain does continue for Northern Ireland, and the showers continue for parts of Scotland as well, likely to be heavy in places with some hail and thunder mixed in. There'll be some brightness between those showers through the rest of the evening, but for Northern Ireland, a very damp end to the day on Sunday. Outbreaks of heavy rain persisting through the first part of the night. Outbreaks of rain as well for parts of Wales and into central and southern parts of England, and generally quite a cloudy end to the day here for many places. That area of rain across Northern Ireland, as I mentioned, pushes its way southeastwards through Sunday evening and into the start of Monday, but it will be turning drier across Northern Ireland and parts of Scotland through the early hours of Monday morning. And under those clear skies, likely to turn quite chilly as well. We could see a touch of grass frost in places. Generally staying a little bit milder though across much of England and Wales under that cloud and rain. Temperatures here around 12 or 13 degrees to start on Monday. So for Northern Ireland and parts of Scotland, a dry, bright but quite chilly start to the day. Plenty of showers continuing to push in from the north, but quite a cloudy and damp day, particularly for eastern parts of England. Maybe some difficult driving conditions here through the morning rush hour. Plenty of showers then through Monday afternoon, and temperatures still a little disappointing for the time of year. 18 or 19 in the south and 10 to 12 in the north.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody.
in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. GB News, Britain's election channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking, this is the nightmare for the Conservatives again. Down to earth. It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it? And most importantly, honest. Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them. They catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And why it matters to you. From your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you. Good afternoon, Britain. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News and we are Britain's election channel.
This vote may seem to be about the politicians in the media, but actually it's about you.
And we won't forget that.
Join us up and down the country as we follow every moment together.
More than ever, it's important to hear
all sides
as you make your decision ahead of polling day.
We're here for you.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's election channel.
Hello, welcome back to GB News Sunday with me, Dawn Neeson, on your telly, online and on digital radio. Now, we're going to have to mention the B word. Sorry about that. A senior Labour figure has said the party will bring back freedom of movement in the EU. They reveal plans for a Labour government to reopen Brexit talks and claim that restoring freedom of movement is paramount. Is this just a foot in the door tactic to undo Brexit, the B word, I'm sorry, or a great move for the country? I'm going to hazard a rough guess as to what the panel can make of this, but I'm going to ask them in any case. Let's go to Jo, who's a former Labour advisor.
No, I'm not. I'm not a former Labour
Well,
advisor.
I mean, you...
No, I worked for Paddy Ashdown.
Oh, of course, yes. Sorry.
You get me muddled up with Scarlett Maguire.
Oh, yeah, of course, yeah.
Everybody does. Michelle did this last time.
You're both so lovely. Thank you very much. Right, OK. So, any case, but you've been involved in politics.
Yeah.
So you know what you're talking about, unlike me. So, what do you make of this, then? This is an interview that...
Yeah, she gave an interview. This is Fiona Alcott, who's something to do with Friends of Labour Abroad or something like
She's
that.
a senior Labour figure, according to the story.
Well, yeah. You know, this is going to allow people like, don't tell me, Ian Duncan Smith and people like that, and probably Bill Cash and various other people, all the usual suspects, come out and go, oh, Labour's got a secret plan to undo Brexit and all of that nonsense. Actually, we need to talk about Brexit, but I know I've said this on every topic we've discussed today, but we need to have a grown-up conversation. Brexit has been an absolute disaster in so many areas. And instead of going, it was the will of the people, what happened was a vote with no plan, no plan, no plan. That's why we've had to plough millions and millions into Fujitsu, as I mentioned earlier, to try and sort out Northern Ireland and trade over there. So, actually, the impact, as we heard on the clip from the People's Vote lady in Yorkshire or wherever she was, you know, the impact on small businesses, the impact on food, the impact on farming, the impact on holidays, travel, etc., it says, we need to have a conversation about how we make it work better. That does not mean by saying, you know, bringing back some sort of freedom of movement. And this is actually also about expats being able to vote abroad, from abroad.
This is, I mean, what she actually said in this an interview with a Mallorca local newspaper, should Labour win the next election, it's prepared to revisit some of the Brexit agreements, such as the Windsor Agreement, and make it easier for Britons to come and go in Europe. Now, obviously, Keir Starmer has been at pains to point out very, very strongly that, you know, he's not going back on the Brexit agreement. He doesn't want to rejoin the EU. So what do you make of what Fiona has said here?
Well, it would be mildly annoying. I don't want to put too funny. It's not going to blow the wheels off the Labour campaign, but I won't say any more about the Tory campaign at the minute. But it'll be mildly annoying because, as you say, all of the hard work that's gone into changing the Labour Party, where the Labour Party, you know, are trying to win back votes who deserted them in 2019 because they wanted to get Brexit done, people that voted Leave because they bought into not necessary policies or idea, you know, but the themes of taking back control of your money, borders and laws from the EU. The idea that there is someone from the Labour Party, a spokesperson clearly attached to the Labour Party, sort of suggesting to expats that if you vote Labour, yes, we can try and we'll reopen the negotiations to see that you could have more freedom of movement and you come to the UK and go back to France or Spain or whatever outside of that 90-day period that I think you now have if you're not resident there. But that's a quid pro quo, because the reason we antagonise the Labour leadership is because that means that you open freedom movement of more people coming into the UK that are not UK citizens. So it does play havoc with the messaging. It distorts it slightly. It is not the end of the world. I would probably suggest as a political analyst rather than a Conservative Party card carrier, but it is still annoying, and it might be something that, as Joe was saying, Conservative senior politicians will want to be pushing on their own literature, perhaps, that if you vote for Labour, you'll get more freedom of movement, they'll take us back into the EU. A vote for reform is just a vote for Labour, so stick with us as the Conservatives.
I mean, Joe, Labour have put a statement out as well saying none of this is our policy. We've left the EU and Labour is clear we are not going back. But the Conservatives had a pretty torrid week, to be fair, with Rishi Sunak and the Commonwealth.
Well, that's their fault. They chose him.
Yeah, no. But, should they be trying to make more of this interview?
No, because, she's... who is she? She's not a part of the shadow cabinet. She's an official within Labour Party organisation. And actually, Keir Starmer has made it extremely clear. Nobody in the Labour Party wants to revisit going through another referendum, God help us, or revisit that. But there are some agreements where there needs to be another conversation because, so many years on, things change. And people are realising now that, that might have seemed like a good idea at the time. Actually, it's not. And it's not always what we're doing in this country, but it's what other countries are doing. And don't forget, whilst we're talking, this weekend, the European elections are taking place. Millions and millions... we're all stuck in our little election here. Millions and millions of people taking part in elections across Europe. Now, the impact of those elections may change the shape of the European institutions over the next few years. So we will have to keep talking. They are our nearest neighbour.
Do you think there will ever be another referendum on whether we should join the EU again?
Possibly in some years'
Do you support that?
Well, I supported staying in. I was a firm Remainer. But I think David Cameron, who might be doing a marvellous job as Foreign Secretary, he was a fool. He only went for that referendum because he was frightened of Nigel Farage, and he didn't have to abide by it. He could have said, I hear what you say, there's clearly need to do more work. And Boris Johnson, who is the most appalling, despicable man who's destroyed politics and democracy and trust in this country, went ahead and campaigned for Brexit and has never put anything in place to deliver or make it work for people.
Unfortunately, Boris isn't here to defend himself, so...
I thought he was joining GB News.
Anyways, because we have mentioned one of the candidates earlier, here are all the other candidates running in the Chinkford and Woodford Green constituency. It's Chris Brodie for the Green Party, Josh Hadley, Liberal Democrats, Paul Legeri, Reform UK, Faiza Shaheen, Independent, Ian Duncan-Smith, Conservative and Unionist, Shama Tatler for the Labour Party. OK, now I'm Dawn Neeson and this is GB News Sunday, and there's lots more coming up on the show. Interesting one, this. A 23-year-old plus-size model has been crowned Miss Alabama. But will we be debating, is idolising obese models empowering or simply dangerous? All of that and much more to come. This is GB News, Britain's news channel. Please don't go too far.
This is GB News, and we are Britain's election channel.
This vote may seem to be about the politicians and the media, but it's actually about you. We won't forget that.
Join us up and down the country as we follow every moment together.
More than ever, it's important to hear all sides
as you make your decision in the run-up to polling day.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel. Britain's election channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Today we've got two fantastic individuals who have invented a teddy bear to help children who are suffering with mental health.
Yes, so Lynn and Samantha Crilly came up with the idea for the Trouble Muncher toy following Samantha's own battle with an eating disorder and OCD.
Yes, the teddy comes with a notepad and encourages its owners to write down what's troubling them, and then they can pop the note into the rucksack on the bear's back.
I struggled with mental health most of my life, actually. And, oh, no, it's fine. I've got one. I feel quite sorry for you. But and one thing I always did was message my mum, and it was a thought disassociation kind of technique. I would message you, even now, I message you thoughts that come into my mind, but massively when I was younger. And I thought, what happens if you're younger and you don't have this?
Yeah, and I think in today's technology-fueled world, I think we go back to basics, and it just helps them to process by writing it down. Everything's so instant these days.
So it's like an indirect way of telling your parents how you're feeling, what you're going through. Such a great idea. What's the feedback been from parents who have got a trouble muncher for their kids? What you've got any stories?
It's been really good. In one household, he sits on the kitchen side, and I think during the day, the parents, the children put their worries in, or at night, and then they know that their parents will look at it during the day. And it's gone into some schools as well.
You'd imagine you'd want one of these trouble munchers in every classroom in every school up and down the country, because children who are being bullied, for example, who feel like they can't tell their parents, they're too embarrassed to talk about it. This is such an important tool, isn't it, for children to communicate that?
Yeah, well, you were saying Mum's a mental health counsellor, and you had a young child who had Snapchat AI. So you talk to an AI in Snapchat, and that's what they talk to now.
The People's Channel. Sunday nights on GB News. From 6, Neil Oliver. At 7, it's Free Speech Nation with Andrew Doyle. At 9, Mark Dolan. And at 11, get set for the week ahead with headliners. Tomorrow's papers tonight. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Tom Harwood. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family. Simply go to gbnews.com/your say.
Welcome back to GB News Sunday with me, Dawn Neeson, on your telly, online and on digital radio. Now, we've just been talking during the break about our Charlie's trousers. If you missed the beginning of the show, you really do need to catch
Dawn,
up.
be truthful. You were actually talking about Charlie's thighs.
Sorry, Charlie's thighs. And if you missed the beginning of the show, you really do need to catch up, because Charlie's thighs featured quite heavily. Right, now, so in any case, we're talking about fitness and bodies, etc. Oh, stop it. Now, a 23-year-old plus-size model called Sarah Milliken has been crowned Miss Alabama in 2024. Marvellous. After a huge win in the national pageant, the beauty queen has been subject to mass online trolling, where haters have branded her an unhealthy embarrassment. That's one of the nicer things people have been saying, by the way. But look, you can see pictures of her there. Is this idolising obese models? Is it empowering, or is it dangerous, given the obesity crisis we are facing, not just in this country, but all over the world? Joe, I'm going to come to you first on this one. Some of the messages have been, it has to say, pretty vile.
That doesn't
surprise me. I mean, you know, there's a healthy respect for There's
a huge difference between...
This is a tricky one.
You know, encouraging people, particularly women and particularly young women... Yes, to have body confidence. And there are cosmetic companies that actually promote that, whether it's, you know, people with caesarean scars and mastectomy scars, or, you know, fat, age, etc., etc., so that actually we move away from the idealised Barbie type thing. But it is quite clear that this young woman is very, very overweight. And I think anything that makes obesity acceptable because of its health issues, we ought to be regarding it in the same way as we regarded smoking. And I find it terribly distressing when you go to a supermarket and you see really overweight small children, and you look in the parents' trolleys, and I'm not talking about people who haven't got any money or people like that. But the stuff, and we know the figures out last week about the incidences of cancer in young people from processed food, ultra-processed food. We know obesity is costing the NHS and therefore us absolute fortunes. And we know that it leads to all sorts of other problems. So I think we have to get the balance right. Yes, be body confident. Nobody needs to be a stick insect. But let's not celebrate unhealthiness.
Yeah, I mean, we're running out of time, unfortunately. Charlie, just coming to you quickly. I mean, it is... I mean, look, you know, she's a lovely young lady. I mean, she's very confident in her body, which is a good thing. However, it's that fine line when we have children going to school who are already obese in this country. How do we draw that line between...
Yeah, so I think, look, there is no place for hate, I think, in the world of society. I know that's probably an obvious thing to say, but the amount of abuse that this young girl might have had as a child for being overweight and for being constantly overweight, I think if that is a way in which she has a platform to say, I am who I am, and, you know, we need to rid this hate, then I think that is fine. But you're right, I don't think it should be an advert for young kids going forward.
OK, we are running out of time. Unfortunately, that is a huge debate and we don't have enough time. Right, you've been with me, Dawn Neeson, and this has been GB News Sunday. Thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it. Don't go anywhere, though, because there's plenty more coming up on GB News Today. In just a moment, it's a debate with Nana Acquia. At 6 o'clock, it's Neil Oliver. Free Speech Nation at 7 and Mark Dolan at 9. Thank you so much for joining me. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. But first, here's the weather with Ellie. See you soon. Enjoy your Sunday.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good afternoon. Welcome to your latest GB News weather from the Met Office. So it's been a cloudy day for some of us, but there has been some sunshine around, all thanks to high pressure situated close by towards the southwest of the UK. But it's these weather fronts out towards the north and northwest that will